The discharge form was still warm from the printer when I first held it, and I remember the peculiar discomfort of that. Paper should not carry warmth when it carries the word final. 2:13 in the morning. Corridor C, third floor of a coastal Maine hospital that smelled of antiseptic layered over something older. The kind of institutional quiet that accumulates in buildings where families have been keeping vigil for decades. A fluorescent tube at the far end of the hallway flickered with a low, arrhythmic pulse. The kind of light designed to keep the eyes moving and the mind from settling on anything too solid. Against the wall, in a metal chair she had not left in 19 hours, sat a woman named Margaret Callahan. Her fingers worked a worn wooden rosary with the mechanical steadiness of someone who had long moved past petition into something quieter and more precise. Her son Thomas was 31 years old, a commercial fisherman who knew the northern waters of the Maine coast the way most people know their own kitchen, without having to think about it. His vessel had capsized 72 hours earlier in a fast-moving coastal storm, and the combined resources of the Maine Emergency Management Agency and the United States Coast Guard had been deployed, documented, and formally exhausted. Chief of Emergency Operations, Werner Haas, whose career held 34 years of citations and whose voice had been trained by long practice to carry the full weight of institutional finality without trembling, had just walked through the double doors of Corridor C and said it plainly. "We are formally calling off the active search. The survivability data is conclusive. I am deeply sorry. I am Claire, and this channel exists for accounts that official records do not know how to classify." Tonight's file has been in our archive for 11 months. I have read it 4 times. What I am sharing is not comfort literature. It is a reconstruction from a Coast Guard incident log, a hospital intake record, a nursing station intake form, and the handwritten Novena diary of a woman who refused to accept any word that contained the sound of ending. If you know the particular pressure of sitting in a corridor like Margaret's, if you have ever felt institutional certainty closing around a situation like a sealed door, stay with me through every detail. Because in this case, the precision of what was missed is the entire point of the story. Thomas had been missing for 72 hours when the search was formally closed. The mathematics of his survival, according to every model applied by every professional in that building, were not merely unfavorable. They were 0, and Margaret Callahan counted her beads and did not move. What the medical and operational record assembled in the 48 hours following the closeout reveals is not carelessness. This must be said clearly and said early, because the institutions involved deserve their due accuracy. The failure that emerges from this file was not one of effort or competence. It was a failure of category, the kind that only becomes visible in retrospect when an outcome refuses to fit inside the frame the process built for it. At 11:04 in the morning of the second day after the capsize, a consolidated hypothermia assessment was submitted to Dr. Haas's office by the medical team's senior consultant. The report ran to 17 pages. The first 6 contained environmental data, current drift modeling, thermal gradient calculations drawn from 3 National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration buoys positioned within the established search radius, and cross-referenced historical survival case literature. The findings across every section were consistent at water temperatures below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the recorded temperature throughout the search zone held between 37 and 39 degrees. The median survival window for an adult male without insulated protective gear is measured in single-digit hours. Thomas had been missing for 48 hours when that report was filed. The remaining 11 pages catalog the operations themselves. 47 helicopter sorties across 3 days. 11 surface vessels operating in coordinated grid patterns. A combined search radius of 214 nautical miles. Infrared scanning technology, certified to detect a 92-degree heat signature against a 38-degree ocean surface from 1,000 feet of altitude. The equipment logged no anomalous biological readings within the search zone. The document's final entry, dated 09/17 on day 3, carried a single classification: closed, exhausted protocol. By 11:30 that same morning, a social worker named Ellen Marsh had been dispatched to Corridor C to begin what the hospital's documentation referred to as the transition process, a phrase whose clinical neutrality manages to be simultaneously accurate and quietly devastating. Ellen would record, in her own notes filed 3 days later, that Margaret Callahan declined coffee, sedation, and all assistance. She sat with her rosary and said, in a voice Ellen described as unnervingly calm, that she had 9 more decades to complete before nightfall and intended to complete every one of them. For those who carry the traditional faith in its full depth, who understand that a novena to St. Jude, patron of hopeless causes, is not a ritual of consolation, but an active, structured petition. What Margaret was doing in that chair was not passive. She had begun the novena the morning of the capsize, before the search was formally called, before the forms were printed, before Dr. Haas had formed his sentence. She was on day 3. 6 days remained. Those who have sat long enough with the old prayers already know an unexpected turn is never mere coincidence. It carries the quiet, unmistakable signature of intercession. The full source documentation for this case, the incident log, the consultant's report, and Margaret's diary, is linked below. These records stay alive because this community carries them forward. If the weight of what you are hearing is settling into something you recognize, something from your own life or from someone you love, take one moment before we continue. Subscribe to this channel and help keep these documented accounts within reach of the people who need them most. These files do not survive on their own. They survive because of you. Now, put yourself in that corridor. You are standing beside Dr. Haas and Commander Patricia Reyes, the lead search and rescue coordinator who initialed the closeout report. You are surrounded by the full architecture of institutional authority. Protocols cross-referenced against peer-reviewed science, decisions signed in triplicate, a hospital attorney who has reviewed the next-of-kin documentation, 3 senior physicians who have unanimously confirmed the hypothermia timeline. Every instrument available in that system has converged on one conclusion. Every credentialed expert in that building has agreed. The process did everything it was designed to do. Here is what none of you in that room had access to. At 11:47 on the morning of day 3, 14 minutes after Ellen Marsh arrived to begin the transition process, a junior Coast Guard data analyst reviewing archived sonar records from 40 hours earlier noticed something small. A single anomalous return signal, logged at 2:09 in the morning of day 2. It had lasted 11 seconds. It showed a heat differential of approximately 2.4 degrees above ambient ocean temperature. The system's automatic flagging had categorized it as a possible biological signature. A senior reviewer cleared it within 90 seconds, classifying it as equipment noise, consistent with debris field thermal behavior. 11 seconds. 90 seconds of dismissal. The junior analyst sent an internal memo at 11:52. He did not know the active search had been formally closed more than 2 hours earlier. He was working from a 40-hour archived data queue. By the time his memo reached Commander Reyes's desk, the machinery of closure was already in full motion. The senior clearance held. The signal was never re-entered into the active record. It sat in an archived partition, time-stamped, documented, and invisible, until a journalist's Freedom of Information request pulled the complete incident log 11 months later and found it on page 43. The instruments worked correctly. The protocols were applied exactly as designed. And somewhere inside all of that precision, 11 seconds of data were classified as noise, and a man's location disappeared into an archive while the paperwork of his death was being prepared 1 floor above. What happened next does not fit inside any of the models that produced the closeout report. That is not rhetoric. It is the documented record. Margaret Callahan completed the 9th and final day of her novena at 6:15 in the evening. She had not left the hospital. Somewhere during day 2, she had been moved from the metal chair to a small family room on the same floor, but the change of location had barely registered. The rosary kept moving through her fingers. At 6:22 that evening, 7 minutes after the final prayer was spoken aloud, a Coast Guard vessel conducting a routine northern boundary sweep, operating 11 nautical miles outside the formally closed search zone, made a visual contact, a man horizontal on a debris field. When the paramedic pressed a thermometer to his skin, 86.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Critically compromised. Alive. Thomas Callahan was airlifted to the same hospital where his mother had not moved for 72 hours. The emergency intake form is time-stamped 7:49 in the evening. Margaret's novena diary, a small spiral notebook filled in careful, unhurried handwriting, records the final prayer of the 9th day at 6:15. The gap between those two timestamps is 1 hour and 34 minutes, just long enough for a helicopter to cover 11 nautical miles and return a man that every instrument in that building had formally declared gone. The attending physician's initial assessment used the phrase physiologically inconsistent with recorded exposure data 3 separate times in the first 2 pages. The report offers no mechanism. It does not speculate. It records what was observed, what was measured, and allows the space between the prior calculation and the actual outcome to stand without explanation. That space, that documented, time-stamped, signed, and filed silence, is where this account lives. I do not present this as argument. I present it as record. Human science had done everything within its design. The instruments were accurate. The protocols were thorough. The conclusion was rational, and the conclusion was wrong. Not because anyone committed an error of competence, but because something stepped into the space that human logic had sealed shut and did the one thing no protocol had room for. It answered a prayer. If you are carrying a cause that has reached its own zero tonight, if you have heard your own version of the sentence Dr. Haas delivered in Corridor C, know that this archive exists for exactly that moment. Leave a name in the comments. Name the cause, name the person, and let those who gather here add their prayers to the petition. The ledger reminds us that human pride builds high walls, but grace has always known where the fractures are. The record for this case is officially closed, but the 7-minute gap between a mother's final novena prayer and a visual contact 11 nautical miles north of the boundary line remains exactly where it was found, on the record, in plain sight, waiting for the right person to read it.